Yeah, so this podcast is about your guys' journey in music and how you got to where you are now. I did read, you guys went to high school together? Did you go to high school together?
No, there was one article that
said that.
Yeah, there's an article that said you guys were like high school alumni of some school. I don't know.
High school sweethearts.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's even better story.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't know if you want to say this before, but no, it's funny. A lot of people think either we're brothers or best friends growing up, and honestly, we're not. We met like through music and like 6 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Justin, tell me about where you grew up and how you got into music then.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Staten Island, which is a very small borough in New York. And I really started more in like the theater side in high school. And then shortly after meeting Slavo and stuff, we got more interested in pop. I was doing a solo project, started off like doing the YouTube cover game. And
oh, sure.
Yeah, and I gained a bit more momentum than I think I anticipated. And once I saw that was paying more than like working as a pool boy 9 to 5, I decided to pursue music. And that was around the time I met you, right? Yeah.
Yeah, when I met Justin, I met him at this like summer bash Staten Island show, and he had on like this tank top and like your typical wafer glasses, and he was like doing this whole like almost like a boy band kind of style solo career thing. So,
you were performing, Justin?
Oh yeah. I was performing in the beautiful Staten Island Summer Bash, which is the equivalent of.
The best part of it was like an acoustic thing, and he was like performing like it was like an NSYNC live concert.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, I need to work with this guy.
Yeah, there's a lot of charisma here. No, but then I met Justin. Before that, I lived in Florida my entire life until I was 19. I moved up to Staten Island to pursue music. There was an internship or apprenticeship program there that I did for like producing and engineering, stuff like that. And about a couple years later, I got done with it, and I was living on Staten Island with my grandpa, and my cousin actually referred me to a studio that he was working at, and that's kind of how we met. Because I was about to go back to Florida, I was like, all right, I'm done with this program. There's really nothing much left here for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I went over to the studio, met him, worked with a couple other people, and we really clicked right away, and we wrote a song together that just kind of sparked this whole project. And
wow,
yeah. And now
well, tell me. So you grew up in Florida, but like, how did you get into music? Like, what drew you into the production side and like the songwriting side?
So I used to be in like screamo bands with my brother. He was a drummer, and I was a guitar player.
Okay.
And I started like super young. He was 3 or 4 years older than me. But so he had like all his friends that were in the band, and I was like the guitar player in the room, like the little kid brother who was like, yo, can I come play with you guys? And so one day they finally let me play, and I was just like, the rest was history for me on that. But I got into the production because we really just wanted to start recording stuff that we were doing. Mm-hmm. And so my brother got this whole rig, and him and I kind of together like started learning things DIY, and I got really into it. I thought it was really cool. I started doing like solo acoustic stuff, and so that was kind of the foundation of it.
It is really funny. We have like, because obviously we're like brothers now, so I'm so close to my family, and he's so close to mine, and we're like stuck with each other almost every day now. So good thing we get along for the most part.
Sure.
But it's funny. I remember, was it the first time I went out to Florida and kicked it with your family? We have these really weird parallels in both of our lives where like we both played football in high school. I was absolute shit. You were like the star of school. We both like randomly got sucked into tap dancing for a show once, right? Weren't you? Or you were in like
I had an ex-girlfriend who was like a big dancer, and she got me to do something.
And so she got you to do something. I auditioned for it. So there's your clear difference. But no, we had these like and once again, Slavo comes from that more rock background, and I was more on the theater side. But like when we met, it was just like the perfect storm. We really got along well as songwriters, but also just as like friends, because you really have to write a great song, you really have to like the people you're in the room with. And I think that's what really stood out to me. And I remember proposing the idea to Slavo, and I know that you had no idea that we'd be talking 6 years later, stuck with each other, you know?
It really was a proposal too. He made it very dramatic. We always talk about this when we talk about how we met, but he like, we were in a session, and he like must've just had this random idea that came to him, and he like dimmed the lights, he closed the door. I was like, all right, what the fuck's about to happen right now?
And down on one knee and
basically.
Yeah, and that was it. And I was like, you and I, we're gonna give this a real shot, and we're gonna make lots of money and have fans all over the world.
The cool thing was when I met him too, though, he was trying to expand his solo thing and do a duo. It wasn't necessarily like with me. I remember he was like auditioning different people, and he saw a couple girls that he wanted to maybe do like a guy-girl thing with, and whenever he asked me, I was like kind of taken off guard because I knew he was doing all these different things, searching for this other stuff, and I was just like the producer at the moment, like songwriter dude, just chilling there. So when he asked me, I was like, interesting, that's cool. This could be a thing, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like now you're more in the more electronic world, whereas you were doing the singer-songwriter acoustic thing prior.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what you said, you guys got together, you wrote a song, and then it kind of caught fire. What was this? What was that song that kind of like really sparked the momentum for you guys?
Yeah, so it was the first song we wrote together. It was
wow.
Yeah, it's called Brooklyn, and it was like one of those songs that we were both first started writing together, and I kind of came up with this idea where, you know, I graduated from Brooklyn College, and I met a girl there, and it was just really writing this very expansive narrative that once again, when we started the project, it definitely sonically was in a different place. It was a lot more retro. It was a lot more electronic. Now we're like gearing more towards, you know, organic instruments and electric guitars and acoustic guitars, and but it was such a fun song, and we released a video that cost more, I think, than any video we've ever shot. And you went into yours, and we made this video that it really did catch fire, and I think for us that was like the moment where we were like, you know, I think we really could do this full time. Yeah.
Another big thing for us too was, you know, Justin, when I met him, he was talking about how he did the YouTube thing. We kind of took that platform and turned it into Fly by Midnight. So a big thing for us was to keep building that fan base, and like we continued that whole cover thing, but in our own unique way. And that was something that we really loved to do, and we did it for, you know, what was it, like 2 years at least? Yeah,
we were doing originals while we were doing covers, which was really, it was like two different passions, like at the same time. We really loved it. You're right. It wasn't like one of those things, we got to do a cover. We enjoyed recreating these songs and taking some of our favorites and really doing them very differently.
And at the time too, I mean, I think YouTube's a little different now, but at the time that was like a great way to build your fan base.
Oh yeah,
we were loving it, you know, 7 years ago, and so that was something that we really tried to take advantage of. And once we saw everything start switching over to Spotify, that was a big goal for us to really make sure that that fan base started getting to Spotify somehow, you know, whether with end cards or, you know, whatever we came up with creatively. So.
Yeah, and honestly, that's like, I guess it's a whole other thing to discuss, Adam, but like we're very, very self-aware of our project and where we want things to grow. So when YouTube was working, we were like, okay, we know 1 million views on YouTube doesn't mean 1 million people in a crowd. So live, and we've always been just super obsessed with the business side of it too, you know, and like understanding the process of going to different platforms like Spotify, like this, and yeah, it's just like it's always changing, and I think that's why we love doing what we're doing, because tomorrow it's a different industry than it was today, you know.
Definitely, yeah. And with that, how are you able to get the people? Were you kind of like in the videos, like, hey, check out, you know, we're on Spotify too? Like, is it kind of like a cross promotion to get your fans to find you on Spotify?
Yeah, we came up with a lot of like random creative ways. I remember one thing we'd love to do is with the end cards, we'd have the song that we had released, the original song that we just released at the time, playing, and then we'd have all kinds of clickable links to Spotify, and stuff to see. Just so like when you'd watch the video, you wouldn't know maybe for the first time that this isn't just a cover group. So you'd hear the original song, be like, oh, what's that? And then click it. And it seemed to work for.
Yeah, and it was, yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things that we knew it wasn't going to work immediately. Like even the idea of playing a show very early on, we knew that we weren't going to get a lot of people. There was a show we played that we were hyped about, and there were 2 people in the audience once. And it was like, crazy. And then it just, but it keeps building and it keeps growing. And it was like, we understood the idea of like, Spotify, literally 1 year, we said our goal was that our top 5 songs on Spotify are no longer going to be covers. They're all going to be originals. And by the end of the year, that was the case.
Wow.
So it was just like, we very much set goals for ourselves, and we continue to, yeah.
And from there, you put out your first record. And then how did you get in the more of the songwriting world? Because I did see that you got, you know, recently you have cuts with like with Cheat Codes and a bunch of different artists. Like how did that, was that kind of parallel also with what you're doing with Fly by Midnight?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's been kind of a new thing in the grand scheme of like our whole project that we've been doing. And
okay,
so
last more newer,
maybe like a couple years, I guess we really like started sinking our teeth into it. And you know, Justin and I, since day one, we've always been songwriters. I've always been a producer, and so I think once we kind of established our project at a spot that we were comfortable with, it was exciting to like, because we'd always been in a room with different writers and different artists and stuff, and just never had that, you know, drive to really push for writing for other people. And then we just wrote a couple songs here and there that artists kind of took and went with it, and it was exciting. And I think we were like, oh shit, maybe we could like do this as well.
Right.
It really is like it's a completely different rewarding feeling writing for someone else. Like a common question we get asked is like, do you write a song and then you're like, no, I want it for myself, not for you.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And it really is. I've never felt that. And honestly, because I feel like the artists that we surround ourselves with and the artists we write for, like last night, we had a single that Slavo produced that we both co-wrote for the artist Julie Bergen, who's signed to Warner in Norway. And she, you know, her label flew her to New York to work with us for a week for her.
Wow.
And it was a really cool experience, but just very different than Flyby. Everything we work with, like even Jake Miller and Sean Hook, these other artists that Vincent is another great example. They're just not exactly in our lane per se. So it always feels like we're flexing a different muscle, and that comes with a lot of just a lot of excitement. And also it's a cool palate cleanser for us as well, to like step outside of what we're doing for a second and then go back in. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. With that question though, when you said, is it a song for me or is it this going to be for somebody else? I feel like because you guys are so established as, you know, Fly By Midnight, and you have all these records out and you have a sound that you have. So when you go into a writing room, I bet you're not thinking like Fly By Midnight. You're thinking, what is this other person? What are they trying to do? And what can I help, you know, collaborate with them on?
It's funny too, because I feel like a lot of people come to us for that Fly By Midnight sound.
Oh, interesting.
And when they come to us, we don't really want to do that sound. Not that we don't want to do it, but it's like, all right, we're trying to be like creative in a different lane. And you know, it's a nice little hybrid. I feel like a lot of the stuff we have out, I like to listen to the stuff, you know, over the past couple of years that other artists did with us. And there's definitely like that common thread through all the music that is like a taste of Fly By Midnight. I feel like when you hear it, it's like, oh, okay, that kind of sounds like something they might have influence on. You know?
Yeah, and it's a good point you say that, because there have been people that like, I think of like Jake's Nobody Else that we did, and like Aryan, who was the head of pop at Apple Music. Like I remember we ran into him at a show, and he's like, I knew you guys did that song, like, because whether we like it or not, we do bring Fly By Midnight into these other songs, and
you have to, right? I mean, that's your guys' life.
It's like woven into our musical DNA. But there was a funny, the session's not coming to mind, but we came in thinking we were going to write a very different genre, and I remember the artist saying like, no, I want to write something in your vein. We were like, oh, okay. And it was like, I think it was an artist that was, I think it was Chad. Chad Tepper came in, and he's like, rock, and I'm like, man, I finally get to put some hair on my chest today, you know? And he was like, I want to write rock, but I want it to be in your pop element. I said, all right.
So much for that.
Exactly. But no, I mean, we love what we do, man. You know, it's like, and once again, we're in this next record we're writing right now is like, we're continuing to mature the brand as we're maturing as people. Yeah.
Sure. Well, the first record you guys put out, was that Cover Charge? Or was it?
That was, so we had 2 early records that we kind of, you know, more of an analytical reason, but like we took songs that we had put out as singles and we just kind of combined them into a compilation.
Oh, okay.
Cover Charge, it's an album, but it's essentially just a compilation of all those cover songs that we did on YouTube. Okay. And then the one that followed that was New York Nostalgia, where it was something similar, where we had early on just put out a bunch of singles, and that was something we just wanted to package together and move on from that chapter. So we called it New York Nostalgia. It's
okay.
Like so one homage, yeah.
So the first like record that you guys sat and put out was Rerunning?
Yep. Correct, yeah. That was
okay.
Yeah.
And was that, tell me about that experience, like putting the album together of all original material, like was that, I mean, you obviously had the singles with the covers, but was it different just going, you know, we're going to go out there with no covers, all original material?
It's funny because when we took on Rerunning, I think we did it because we saw how people reacted to us compiling New York Nostalgia.
Okay.
And it was such a funny thing for us because we're like, people were like saying congrats on the new album, and like there was so much attention behind it. And it was like, we just kind of laughed at each other like, this is all the music that's already been there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it was cool to see that, like, because in the world of Spotify, how popular it is and you know, was back then, it was a single game, you know what I mean? It still is a very single based game. But for us, it was like, okay, we're like considering ourselves a band. So how do we like really stay true to those roots? And we wanted to do an album and really paint a true story about what we were going through at the time. And yeah, I think New York nostalgia being compiled and people getting excited, they'll kickstarted that for us.
Yeah, and honestly, it Rerunning brought a sense of legitimacy to the project. It really did, and it was like, not like there wasn't that before, but I think in the industry you tend to get a little bit lost in like, how do people perceive us? Because at the time we were still kind of doing covers in some respect, but I think dropping that album and the love it got, and like there's a handful of stories of like people that reached out to us in behind the scenes from that album. We're like, wow, there's like, I think people are really taking us seriously in that regard, and that was just another thing that kind of motivated us to get ready for the next album.
Right. And at that point, were you guys still doing live shows? Because you did talk about that one show where you said, yeah, we did a show and there's like 2 people there. But at this point, were you playing out more, or were you kind of just still staying within the the studio and the internet kind of being the fan base?
Was
that was the City Winery.
That was the City Winery. Yeah. So we sold out an album show in New York for that album.
Oh, okay. I did read that. I wasn't sure if that was for the New York nostalgia record or if it was for Rerunning.
Yeah, remember it was like a 300 cap room, so it wasn't like mind blowing. But for us, it was such a big deal because we were headlining it, and
that's big.
Our home turf, and it was cool to see that we could pack a room like that. And it was a freezing night. I remember we were like, dude, no one's gonna come out. It's like so freaking cold. And there was a line out the door, and it was really cool to experience with all those people they knew all the words to every song too, and that was such a special moment for us.
Yeah,
awesome.
And like honestly, that album, like I said, there was a handful of stories, but like without exactly giving names away, but there was a situation for that album that, and I don't think we've ever told the story before, so this is an exclusive.
I love it.
But we were on the ferry. You know the story I'm going to talk about. And we got an email, a response essentially from someone in the industry, and it was like we had sent the single "You Belong." That was like the one essentially that was going to be the lead single coming into Rerunning, and he was like, "This is super dope. Would love to meet at the office. Can you come here tomorrow?" And we were like, "Hell yeah!" Not realizing we're in New York, and he sent us the address, and it was LA. So we're on the ferry, the Staten Island ferry, coming back to Staten Island, and we call our manager, and we're like, "Hey, what do we do?" And we literally went straight to JFK or Newark with nothing. We brushed our teeth in Starbucks the next morning, and we literally took what are those scooters? Bird scooters.
Yeah, like
a
the
bird
birds.
scooter over to essentially play the entire album for this team. And yeah, I mean, it ended up on the homepage of Apple Music the next day when the album came out, and it was like it was a very, very weird rush. And
oh man, I can't even imagine that, because that's just so many eyes are on your record if it's on the main page.
Yeah, it was
You must have seen massive. Were you seeing like massive numbers transferring over to Spotify, or were people staying on Apple Music?
It was a little bit of both. I think in general the album coming out, because then "You Belong" was on New Music Friday US.
Wow.
Spotify, which once again, like that, we're just 2 dudes just making music in Staten Island at that point. So like we're like shit,
right?
So yeah, I think that whole album was like I said, very legitimizing for us. It was like okay, we're making music in the corner of Staten Island, but I think the world's hearing it now.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And with that record, where you weren't signed to a label, that was independently done?
Yeah.
No, everything up to these last 3 singles that we did has all been independent.
Independent, wow. And so with Rerunning and having it on Apple Music's homepage and getting on New Music Friday, I'm sure you were getting calls from record labels all the time, like, hey.
We'd have like random YouTube videos kind of popping off too, and we'd get emails here and there just because of like random little like spikes and numbers here and there. And it's just funny to think back how much we pursued labels even last year, and to now like we're like kind of done with them. I mean, we're at that
kind of don't even need it anymore, right? I mean,
we're at that point too. Like with our our track record, we've seen like what we can do without it, and at this point, unless someone's like promising us a lot of money, then we're
right. Some insane guarantee or some signing bonus that's like 100%. Through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, now it's like the one pet peeve of ours is to be told that we can't release a shit ton of music because we're writers, you know. Slavo's a producer. We could crank out a song and get ready to press the button tomorrow. And like that sort of like one-to-one connection with our fans, I feel like getting a label involved sometimes makes it a bit muddier.
Oh, totally.
But once again, we're not anti-label because I do think there's going to be a time on this trajectory that there will be a next level projection. But I think we're excited to, I think, go back to riding the indie coaster of like, yeah, just kind of like just going back to that burn, that nice slow burn up, you know?
Yeah, that's cool. So with the, well, I mean, obviously the huge success of Rerunning, you put out Happy About Everything Else. Was that your next album? And what would you say like the milestone of that record is, or was it a lot different having, now you have like an established fan base, you've been on, you know, Apple Music's homepage. Was there kind of a, you know, did you feel like you had to prove something again, or like do something as good as what was before, so you're not like falling back? I mean, I guess.
I mean, Happy About Everything Else had Lovely on it, which is our
biggest
streaming song today.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was the biggest milestone I think for that. But I like to consider Happy About Everything Else our like moving to LA album, because that was the one that we really came over here, wrote a lot of songs for, and kind of inspired us to move here. Now we're here. So it's one of those things where like when I look back on those songs, like, and they all, like, I can remember where we were when we wrote them. There's a couple that we still did in New York, but it was a very like blend of the two, and kind of inspired us to come out here and really pursue our career in LA.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, to outdo Rerunning, our headspace was like, once again, Rerunning was in the corner of Staten Island. I mean, did we even co-write any songs for that?
There might have been like one or two,
and we were okay. And at that point, we were co-writing with other people, but maybe not necessarily for Fly By Midnight. And so the idea for Happy About Everything Else was like, we have enough momentum from Rerunning to get in the room with, you know, some people that we've been wanting to work with for years for Fly By Midnight. And the first one that comes to mind, who, weird enough, like, we were geeked about this session, like, but now he's like one of our best friends. But like Derek Furman, who we did the song Love Me Like a Friend with, his whole thing was like, you know, I think a couple years before, and we laugh about it, but we tried to get in a room with him a couple years before that, and he's done Philip Phillips' Home, Goo Goo Dolls, Andrew McMahon, like the list goes on, and then we were able to write with him, and that day come out with Love Me Like a Friend, which was the second most successful single on Happy About Everything Else. And we talk about when we were hit up from labels. I feel like we were hit up more from that video going viral than anything. And it was just an interesting album. Like Slavo said, even from getting Betty on Lovely was like such a, a lot of people think there's a lot of politics in that, but being that was independent, it really was DMing her and us standing around our phone and she's typing back and her saying, when do you guys want to record it? And we're like, what has happened? Like, this is a person that we've been listening to from the beginning of Fly By Midnight. And also, I'll add too now, is one of our best friends. And it's like, it's very weird. And we constantly remind her that it's a geeking thing for us, that we're like with her now.
What's a cool thing now, too, because full circle, I mean, Justin and I started Fly By Midnight, like obsessed with her album, Take Me Home. What was it, Take Me Home When You Go or something like that? Something about Take Me Home.
What was the album?
Fire album. We used to reference it all the time for the stuff we were doing. She has a song called Missing You that was like, it was our bread and butter. We love that song. And, you know, fast forward to today, now we're working on music for her, and like we're working with her on stuff. And it's just like, when I think about it, I get chills, because we were like trying to like take the blueprint of that album, and like we loved her project generally. You know what I mean? So it's a cool full circle moment to like figure out how we got to this point of like just the DIY-ness of 2020, and you know, DM someone and all of a sudden you're like making music with this person that you like worship their music. Yeah,
I mean, another perfect example is like Jake Miller, who's on Automatic. This is like, I don't know if we're jumping ahead of you.
No, it's fine. I was actually gonna go into that. That was kind of my next route. But yeah, no, we'll go there.
I mean, it's just like another example of a dude that we DM'd with, and then went out to LA where around the time we were writing Happy About Everything Else, and he was like, well, do you guys want to write on my project? So we actually started, it was the opposite of Betty, where Betty started on our project and now we're working with her. But with Jake, it was writing 2 singles for him, and then recently now bringing him onto our project. And it's like, once again, another super, super close friend of ours. Probably we've gotten way closer with him throughout this whole quarantine experience, because he's like in our in our quarantine, our circle.
Sure. The few people you can see.
Yeah, exactly.
The smallest.
Yeah. It just like that DIY stuff is like, that's like Slavo said, it's our bread and butter, and it's something we're really proud of. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been doing it from day one, was all DIY, and still doing it like that. With coronavirus, and I'm curious about this. So you put out Happy About Everything Else in 2019. Were you able to push it, tour it, and then where were you guys at? What were you up to when everything kind of locked down?
Yeah, I mean, because we move with music so quickly that by the time we moved to LA, which we just moved to LA this past January. So,
okay. We're in San Diego. Yeah, so you haven't been there very long then.
Oh,
About
nice.
a year, almost a year.
Oh, there we go. Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so where's I going with that? Oh, no, so we moved out to LA in January, and by then we were already one single, Add Above Your Head already. We were one single into the next.
We put that out
record.
when we were in New York.
We put that out when we were in New York, so we were already like weirdly past Happy About Everything Else already.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Going through our next cycle. Because yeah, I mean, the thing with our project too is like when we put out an album, it really has been more play a show in LA and play a show in New York, and really kind of expanding outside of that. Minus like the one college tour that we did, we haven't really toured an album, which is exciting, and it's something that.
Oh, you cut out. You froze. You guys there?
Oh no!
Oh, you froze for a second. No, you're back. You're back. You're back. Are you? Am I there? Ah! You guys still there? No. Are you there? You're frozen on my screen.
Oh no! Can you
You're
hear
there
us?
now. Now I can hear you. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay,
Can you hear
sweet. Yeah. Craft out for a second. You're good.
Oh no, we made it through. All right.
I would like to do this whenever we cut out.
Yeah.
We just
It's just like, are you guys just sitting there? Zoom is so
yeah,
weird.
No, I was saying that no, we just we've never really officially toured an album, so like that's something we're looking forward to. I think when the world restores, there's a couple of tours that we're already in discussions for, and it's like that's like the next level of something we're excited for.
Yeah, I think that would have been our next phase for sure for this year. I mean, it was a big. We were talking to different
booking agents,
like booking agents and stuff, and just how to elevate that whole touring side of our industry and like our stuff. So yeah, that was definitely the next move for us for sure. And then it kind of just got halted, but
sure,
it got halted for everyone though. So
yep,
yeah.
Exactly.
So with you guys moved in January, then everything locked down. What, like March? So like a few months in after you guys had been there, you've put out like I think 5 singles. Like with LA Lonely, was that the first song you guys like officially put out in Los Angeles?
Yeah, we wrote that in this room we're in now.
Oh wow.
With who wrote that one?
Zomos.
We wrote that with the writer Zomos, who's out of
New York.
Oh wow, you came all the way to LA.
Yeah. We write with so many people. It's like we feel bad sometimes when like we don't.
But I remember we started writing that here, and we had to finish it, and she was quarantining in Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
So the story goes that we started it here, finished it when she was in Pennsylvania, and then we were like in this place where it was like, are people releasing music? Do we want to release music? Like, what do we do? And it got to a point where we're just like, I mean, what else are we gonna do? Like, we're creative people. Let's keep the ball rolling, and we could do it. We have the the luxury of being able to do it, and we're very fortunate for that. And so we just kind of kept going, and from there, we just kept co-writing on Zooms, which is such a weird thing. And
yeah, I can't. Yeah, well, so then with like Lost Without You and Caffeine, those are songs that you guys you wrote in that room during quarantine?
Lost Without You is the exception.
Oh, okay.
Lost Without You was written a year before during that LA trip, actually.
Oh, okay.
That we wrote Happy About Everything Else. It was during that trip, which is like a weird thing because that, you know, Adam, you were talking about like songs feeling like us or not feeling like us.
Right.
That one, we went into the room with a writer, Sophie Simmons, and there was no expectation of what we were writing for. She's an artist, but she's more of a writer now. And like, we weren't really focused on a song for us. So it was like, we were put together by managements, and like, we left that session pitching the song for about a year. There were major label artists that were going to release it. Then they dropped, and another artist stepped up. Then a DJ. It went through all these different hands, and then I remember telling Slavo, like, yeah, I think we should just do it, because my vocal was already on it at the time as a pitch, and I selfishly just liked the way I sounded on it, and then Slavo recorded his chorus on it, and then through means, once again, another funny thing, but we just cold emailed Clara Mae, and she's in Sweden, right? She's in Sweden, and very quickly we realized that we both mutually admired each other's projects, and then that was it. Yeah.
Wow.
It's so funny too, because that was the first time. That was the first time that we've ever collaborated on something, and I wasn't in control of like recording it, her vocals. So it was like a funny thing to be in like this world where we can't get together because she's in Sweden and there's this coronavirus and we can't be in the same room. She sent the vocals the next day, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And it's so funny that the way that the world is right now, all the vocals that I get now are just sent to me, you know what I mean? So it's very rare these days that I'm able to record someone's vocals, which I love doing. And it's like, yeah, it's such a funny thing that like I've gotten so used to that now, and it's such an okay thing. But I used to be like such like an OCD freak about, okay, I need to put this vocal, and that was like a cool moment for me, even personally, like getting her vocal. And we did that for the same for Shoffy. Jake actually came in and recorded his, but Shoffy was the same thing where he just sent a vocal.
Wow.
And it did great, and it was just like, okay, this works. We could do it.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
awesome. And that, I want to say one comment on that, the song that you guys had. It's funny that, yeah, we were talking about, you know, is this song for somebody else or is it a Fly By Midnight song? But it's funny that song was pitched around as not a Fly By Midnight song, and then it eventually became one because it was great and you guys loved it, and you wanted to put it out.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like I said, the original pitch that was going around was my vocal on it, and then Sophie Simmons, the other writer, so it was written as a duet from the get.
Okay.
So we kind of already had that mindset for it, whereas Caffeine and Automatic weren't necessarily written for a feature per se.
Sure.
And it's funny, we wrote that, I think the Thursday night that at midnight, well, I guess LA time was 9 o'clock, that Senorita came out with Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello. And so I like to think that was the reason why we did a duet.
Yeah.
There you go.
Cool.
No, for sure. But to answer your other question, Caffeine, Automatic, these were songs written weirdly not in quarantine. They were written between January and March.
Oh, weird.
Right,
okay.
right.
Right before.
Right before. And what was cool about doing that was that, and honestly, when Corona first hit, Slavo, you just touched on it, but like for the first time in our career, we were weirdly uninspired for a second to write. So it was like, well, at least we have these great songs that we wrote, and now we can just focus on the visual aspect.
Right.
So we're really able to focus on the visual for Caffeine, for Automatic, for Lost Without You as well, and like take a break from writing for a second. But now we're back and all inspired again. So.
Were you guys like, because obviously the visual aspect of your project is a huge part of it. Were you always in like intrigued by that? Like, did you take video classes or like in high school, or was that anything you were ever interested in prior to mixing it with your songs?
Yeah, I think that was, going back to the YouTube days, something that Justin and I pride ourselves on is just that we had a moment very early on where we had our friend do a video for us for Fly By Midnight, and it just didn't feel right. And we were like, all right, let's try to do it ourselves. We did this really cool DIY thing. We put it out in the world. And like, I think that moment inspired us to be like, okay, let's keep doing this ourselves and see where it can take us. And just like anything else, being as long as we did it, I mean, we got to the point now where all the videos you see, we're still doing to this day.
That's so
Directing
cool.
them, editing them, coloring them, all that stuff. So
yeah,
it's just one of the things that we love doing. We like coming up with concepts. We like cashing out all the details. Justin's like the business mindset where he grabs all the people that we need for the videos and really organizes it, and he finds locations, and it's like a really, really cool, well-oiled machine that we've got at this point. And at this point even too, I think we're always open to pushing that to the next level and getting, bigger budgets and stuff. But to be honest, we're able to do so much with so little, and we've done it for so long like that it's not really necessary for us.
Yeah, it's a story this past year was like shooting the Lost Without You video. Clara's in Sweden. How do we make this happen? And Slavo and I spent, because Slavo just touched on that I have the business mindset, but you're way more in the trenches with like creating stuff in many ways. And we had this idea of building this 8 foot high, 12 feet wide green screen box.
Wow.
And
Finally got rid of it like a month ago. It was just sitting in the backyard.
Oh, you had it.
All the wood was
Yep.
just sitting there.
And literally Slavo and I, and when I mean Slavo and I mean Slavo and Slavo telling me what to do, but literally drilling, shit together to build this big ass box that we brought out to the desert, and like a sandstorm like knocked it down. It was all this crazy shit, but the crew that we hired for that, which was very minimal because of COVID and stuff.
Right.
I remember we worked with now a friend of ours, Russell Tandy, who's the DP for that. And he looked at us, he's like, I got to take a video of you guys drilling this shit together. No one's going to believe that you guys you're like sweating. And this is like, we're drilling it back together in the desert right before we're about to go on camera. We're dripping in sweat.
Oh my gosh.
We have like a whole like DIY blueprint of a piece of paper. Like this goes here, do this. Like a little instruction for ourselves.
And it's just
I
like,
remember.
Yeah, but we're down for it, like it excites us. And I think one thing that's really cool this year is there's been more focus, even in press and even in the way we communicate with fans, that I think people are realizing more and more that we do that. In the beginning, maybe there was a bit more of a facade, and now it's like weird in pop culture. It looks cooler to like let fans know that like, yeah, we are kind of like sweating and like doing all this shit ourselves per se. Yeah.
And I think people connect to that because you're not this like being out there in the world. Now you're just, you're people just like they are, and they're seeing you in your own element. I think that's right. I think that's one thing that's really kind of a benefit of what's going on in the world. Like you guys are in your studio, and now when somebody watches this, they'll know, oh my gosh, 2 of my favorite songs were written in the room they're sitting in right now. It's just like these things that no one would ever have access to prior to the whole world shutting down.
It's true. Yeah. And I love the world we live in now, where everyone is so excited about who's writing the songs, who's producing it. You get all this content about stuff. And we were talking the other day about how New York Times does the diary behind a song, and we just, even as like we're creators and like these are people we look up to, and we love watching that, So yeah, it's cool that the world we live in, they have all these different songwriting shows now. And
there's one on Netflix too. I haven't watched it yet, but it's all about like the behind.
Yeah. And honestly, like that like run and gun guerrilla type of producing anywhere we go, we've been embodying that longer than I think we realize. Like I always reference, and I tell the story to a lot of people, but like when we wrote Lovely, which was in Nashville, we had one day off on a college tour we did, and we went into Nashville, we wrote that song, and I always remember, which I don't know if you remember this, but I was like very nauseous for some reason. I don't know what happened, but I don't know if I didn't eat during that session, but right after we went to Starbucks in a mall in Nashville, and I said, Slavo, I gotta walk around to get food. And when I came back, Slavo was sitting in Starbucks producing Lovely, and literally producing that, and a lot of that stayed in the song.
I wonder, because we literally just left that session. I wonder why I felt the need to pull that up there. Maybe I was just bored and I liked the song so much. Honestly, I don't even know.
It was weird because you've never done that.
No, and I mean, and it's funny too, because like now when you travel and you go see your family, you can't really go anywhere. So a lot of the times when I travel now, I'll bring my little setup and I'll just stay in my parents' like kitchen and I'll produce on the laptop, But it's, when I think about it, like everything is so consolidated these days and everything's on your computer. I mean, everything I have here, I basically could take with me. You know what I mean? Which
That's
is
so
really
rad.
Cool.
So I think the moral of the story is that if we produce something in Starbucks, it'll probably do really well. So when things open again, we will be setting up a studio in
a Starbucks.
Exactly.
I love that. I want to talk to you real quick about the Automatic single with Jake Miller, and then I have one more question for you. So tell me about that song. You said it was written in those first 3 months of quarantine or prior?
Who did you write Automatic?
Rebecca Page.
Rebecca
So that
Page,
was before. Yeah, it was before quarantine, right?
Yes, it must have been, right?
Because we met her. So we played a show. I don't know if you've ever heard. It's called School Night. It's like
yes, I have heard of it in LA.
Yeah. So we
February, right?
in February. So we played that. That was like a cool stepping stone for us.
Oh yeah, that's a
moving out to LA.
dope thing. Yeah.
And the writer Rebecca Page was there, and we connected shortly after. Didn't know much about her, and she came through. We wrote Automatic, and that was like when we signed this like small indie deal. That was supposed to be one of the first singles, right? And we just kept wanting to find the right person. Things weren't locking, and then at the end of the day, Jake hit us up and said, "Hey, we should actually do a song together. and we were like, we have the perfect one.
Oh, wow.
This made sense. Yeah, it's funny because we always picture that song having a rapper on it. We tried all different artists and stuff, and we like really pushed for that. And then at some point, when he said that, I feel like we were at that point with that song where we just wanted to give it to the world, and we're like, Jake would kill it, and it just like made sense, you know?
Made sense.
Yeah, and he sounds great on it too. It's
yeah, it's such a rad song.
And once again, I was saying how like as much as we've become close with Clara and Shoffy now we're friends with them, but working on Automatic with Jake, I feel like fans know that we were very much in the same room. We were it's a very connected song, and we're also, the three of us really resonate with that song right now. We're all in relationships, you know, and like and our significant others are very tight too. So it's a really special song for us right now. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then all these songs, you guys said you signed a small indie deal. Are you putting out, is that going to be on are all these songs going to be on a record, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, so when we first started it, our idea was to do like a 4-song EP where they're all collaborations. And so with that being said, we have one more left. We plan on releasing it next year at some point, hopefully.
Okay.
Hopefully sooner than later, because we love putting out music. But we're still in the process of figuring out who's going to be on that song, and we love the song. It's really cool, and we already know what we want to do. It's just finding that last piece of the puzzle. And so yeah, but the idea is to put it in an EP and package it all together.
Yeah, I think especially in a time when everyone's so disconnected, we wanted to start off this deal, and like this deal centered around those 4 songs and like having this collaboration, you know. But it is funny. I think we can be transparent in saying that, like, looking back on this process, especially this last song, we're like, you don't want to just like throw anyone on it. You want it to be special, but you also want to give the world music.
Sure.
So it is a very interesting time for us where we're like, we have a list of like 20 people right now that we're in communications with, and it's like, but just cut a vocal on it. We just want to put it out, you know? So, but yeah, that's the idea. And then after that, we're writing for the 2021 record. Yeah.
Very cool. Can't wait. And then I did see on your website, you got a bunch of songs, kind of like holds and stuff that you've worked with other people. Like I brought up earlier, cheat codes, and that's awesome. That's so cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I do have one more question for you guys. I want to see if I can get an answer from both of you. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
The one thing I always like to say is find someone to work with. And I mean, I think that's because I have, you know, Justin and I have been working together for so long, and it's cool to do everything yourself, but when you have another person to collaborate with, I feel like that's a game changer, especially if you're the kind of person that, you know, does well in those situations. Just find a team, find people that can really support what you're doing, and it'll help you go, you know, a little further than you probably think you would. So
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I've always kind of, you know, early on when I was doing the solo thing or whatever, I had said to someone asked me how hard I've been working, and I said, I've been working all day at this. And their response to me was, well, there's 24 hours in a day, so I don't think you were working all day. And that's kind of, and that's always kind of stuck with me. And that's like to aspiring artists, but also to people that are pursuing an unorthodox passion that's not a guarantee. I really think it's not the 9-to-5 mindset. And like, you really just need to like live and breathe this shit. And like, it's not easy. And we've went through waves of like trying to navigate that and like living also. But I guess to like make that concise, it really is just putting your blood, sweat, and tears into it. And also understanding that every day you need to grow in your craft. Because I think we never want to stop getting better. I don't think we've hit our ceiling, and we know artists that have felt like they've hit their ceiling, and those are the ones that kind of fall back a little bit. So.
I think it's too like important to reflect on your successes, like going off of that. I feel like we have moments all the time where we're like, man, are we doing this right? And then people are hitting us up and like, yo, I love your project. This is like someone we love. And it's like, oh, maybe we're doing something right. I don't know. So
yeah,
those validating moments.
Exactly.
And honestly, and to be completely honest, that's something that I've personally struggled with. That being that we're so, you know, looking down, driving forward, sometimes you forget that all the shit you have accomplished. And that's why I love doing stuff like this, honestly, because it's like a memory lane type of thing. But the people we have written with recently are like, man, I've loved you since X and Y. And we're like, oh man, you kind of forget that you're like doing this for a living.